Hey guys, did you know that I like Genshin Impact, the free-to-play mobile and PC game? What is up, Femboy Army? It is me, Cura, and yes, I have a breastplate. Haters gonna hate. So at this current point in time, I'm getting stuff ready for Otakon in July. It's currently May. And so for one of my cosplays, which is Kuki Shinobu from Genshin Impact, there's a weapon that I need to make. So yeah, y'all know that I'm a Genshin Impact simp, so y'all should know this was coming eventually where I'd start making Genshin weapons. So today we're gonna be building Kuki's Dagger from Genshin Impact. It's a small little thing about this long. It's not that big, but it's gonna be a little bit of a fun one because she got electronics. So in this video we're gonna be going step by step on how I'm doing this, starting off with Cura, ending off, well, with the finished product, of course. So follow me for this epic journey of me making my first actual prop weapon. So without further ado, let's get this thing started.
Greetings, children. I am Akemi. If you haven't already, subscribe and turn on notifications to get notified of every upload, or else, well, you will face the consequences.
Hello and welcome back to my disembodied voice. So first off, we have the handles all sliced here. By the way, this beautiful file is by CatTailStudios on Etsy. Link down below. I have some ununiform support blockers just going across here to block out the details, so that way no supports form there because they're unnecessary. But I left everything else formed, like down here, all that. I kind of missed that, but you kind of get the point. I have all the supports coming down in these square sections, stuff like that, just so that way they don't look like crap and they work. For the handle here, I'm going to be printing it at 80% infill with the gyroid pattern, and I'm going to be printing it at 210 degrees with a 60-degree bed temp. I'm also going to be printing these with a raft, so that way it adheres better to the plate and less likely to fail. And this is what the preview looks like of it. You can see all the little supports just forming there, and it pours down here and here, and it's not really much support material anyway, so it's fine. Alright, here we have the details. I only changed a couple settings here. All I did was change the infill to 100%, and I got rid of the raft, so that way this has no raft, so that way it doesn't get stuck or anything like that. So one other thing I had to do with some of these pieces, like these small pieces for example, I had to multiply them. So all I had to do was right click it, hit multiply selected, and then the number of copies I needed, which for these small ones in particular, I needed 23 copies. So the other stuff that I needed to multiply was just by one. So the pieces were this one, and this one. That's pretty much it for those pieces. Now let's talk about the blades. All right, and here's how I had the blades set up. So I'm actually recording this after I printed these, so I'll just go over the old settings I had for this, which I changed because I was experimenting. I originally had the print temp at 195, and I dropped the infill down to 60% on this, and lines for the infill to help the fusion since there's going to be a light inside. And the support overhang is 37% to form more supports, and that's pretty much all I changed here. I did print with a raft, and I did have one massive support blocker just to block out some supports that were forming up here. But now that you know how this is all set up, let's return to live action me. And that's pretty much it for Cura. It's pretty straightforward stuff, very simple. If you want to follow along, you can use what I did as reference for what you're doing. I just wouldn't use what I did for the blades because that may not be my final settings with experimenting. And with all that being said, let's get to the print. Hello, it's Cura's disembodied voice back here again. I forgot to mention earlier, I'm using Overture PLA Professional, aka their PLA Plus, for the entire handle, as well as the details. The handle's printed out just smoothly, no issues whatsoever. You can see there is a little bit of a cutoff on the side where the slicer and the physical bed didn't quite line up. The actual piece is printed fine. That doesn't really matter to me. Here are the details printing. Now, if you notice, there are some pieces missing and one piece is moving around in the back. That's because this print failed. Now what happened here is that it didn't adhere properly to the bed because I had the initial layer speed too fast. I had some glue on the bed already, so I just loaded it back up, slowed down the initial layer speed, and it printed perfectly as you can see here. And yes, I know the bed's sturdy. I cleaned it after. I'm sorry, I forgot. And here's the Sunwoo transparent PLA. Now this stuff is like your typical PLA, same melting point, same bed temps, everything. It's just transparent and you can see through it. Oh yeah, look at that tasty roll. Now, we'll stab it like our enemies. And here's a bit of a closer look at this absolute beauty of a roll. Like, oh my god, this stuff looks gorgeous. Y'all need to try this. All right, let's get this old PLA out of here and swap it over with the new one. Just pulling it through the extruder here. And now let's just plop the new roll onto the spool holder. And let's just insert the transparent PLA like so. And finally, we have the blades. So you can see the blades were printing pretty good, and then they weren't. This print failed 3 times. The first time it turned into a giant spaghetti ball, and then the next 2 times it was caused by a kink in the PLA not allowing the extruder to send it through because of how brittle this transparent PLA is. So in order to fix this, I had to speed up the process. I was printing it way too slow, and I increased my nozzle temperature to 205 instead of 195. And now, it's done. And for these small pieces, I had to scrape them off the bed, and then I had to pour them into this cup, which this is a GamerSupps cup. Use code Kira for 10% off your entire order at gamersupps.gg. Just look at the beautiful art of this gamer girl waifu cup from GamerSupps. They just have top quality cups and art from artists all over the place. Just go and get some like right now. Before I started sanding, I started gouging out these holes so that way the pegs for each of these blades can connect together and the blades can connect seamlessly. Now for the exciting world of sanding. So here's one of the pieces of sandpaper that I'm using. It's an 80 grit piece. I'm using this to scuff it up and try and knock down those wear lines very quickly. And then after I use that, I move to a 100 grit sandpaper to smooth it down a lot more. I highly recommend the sand on a surface that you're okay with getting dirty, mostly outside, but inside can be okay as long as you got a trash can right next to you. Just don't huff the dust. And I also recommend wearing gloves so that way you don't scuff up your hands like I did after this. It was not exactly the most fun experience. 0 out of 10, IGN would not recommend. I'm not gonna show you every piece getting sanded because it's the same exact process for every piece. And I'm so sorry I forgot to show the part where I do wet sanding with 600 grit sandpaper. Oh my god, I missed one thing. I'm so sorry. So here we're going to be using some painter's tape. Now this is frog tape. It's a very strong tape. It has great adhesion and it has very minimal bleed through. It's just a great all-around tape. Bit pricey, but it's good. So now we're going through the very painful process of taping off all the edges here. We're doing this so that way we can keep the edges from being painted so that way we can actually see the LED light shine through the blade. Now this process was a tad annoying, but we got through it. It's time to talk about the paints, but my microphone didn't record for this, so deal with crap audio, thanks. So I have a wide array of paints I'm going to be using for this little thing. So how can we not start off by priming this thing? I'm going to be using this Duplicolor Automotive Series filler primer. It's on the pricey side, but it covers very well. It'll fill in a bunch of scratches as well as layer lines. And then on top of that, I'm going to be using a Krylon all-in-one gloss black. This is going to be my base coat for the entire blade so that way the metallics can lay down nicely. And then after a base coat on the handle, I'm going to be using this Rust-Oleum metallic silver. I'm kind of experimenting here because I'm not sure how it's going to react with the gloss black. I'm only using it on the handle and accessory pieces because I'm going to be using this Duplicolor Metal Cast Purple Anodized Coating. It should work well as a tint, and I want to see if it'll work well with this silver, so that way I can have a really nice metallic purple for all the purple section on this blade. And last but not least for the paints, what I'm going to be using for some of the details as well as the blades themselves is this Krylon Fusion all-in-one metallic dark metal. Now this should look really nice, and I'm very excited to use this for the first time. Now I genuinely thought that all that stuff was gloss black until I looked at the references. I was like, oh my god, I gotta get something else. And then to top it all off for the clear coat, I am going to be using the Spray Max 2K Clear Glamour Clear Coat. Now this here is a really expensive and high quality clear coat. Like this is $21 a can on Amazon for this stuff. It's insane. And it has an activator which means it'll only last for 48 hours. So because of that short shelf life, I'm going to be using this at the same time as me painting some of my Iron Man parts. Subscribe for some videos on that suit. But now that we went over what we're using, let's use them. Starting with the filler primer, you can be very liberal with this stuff. It's mostly to fill in those layer lines and make it nice and smooth. Right after that, we're doing the black base coat for everything, so that way the metallics can look nice and pristine. And here's the metallic base coat for the purple pieces I'm going to be painting. You can see how shiny this stuff looks. It's amazing. And when I was putting on this metallic dark metal, I was just blown away by how fantastic this stuff looks. And the final color here, which is the Metal Cast Purple, it's absolutely gorgeous. This is probably the best purple paint I've ever seen or used. And now, time for electronics. So before we get into electronics, I just need to get this right off the bat. I suck. So when I went to high school, I was in an automotive program for about 4 years, but that was mostly just an all-around thing. I learned a lot about electronics, but mostly the basics. So you'll see that I don't really have too much experience on doing this properly, so this is just how I got things to work. When I was soldering the wires for the lights, this switch, it was an absolute mess. I had to scrap that footage. It was just terrible. So this is just my vague attempt at trying to get this thing working, which it ended up working. I wouldn't recommend doing it how I did, and definitely don't do this while the batteries are in the sockets, for the love of God. But in the end, it got working, so that's all that matters. So let's get right to it. Starting off, I applied some solder to the wire. Pre-soldering the wire helps get it connected to that tiny little connector. And after putting in these A23 batteries and testing it out, you can see it lights up nice and everything. It's nice and bright even with just one battery, and the switch works perfectly. And now prepping for assembly, I'm trying to play the do not cut myself at 3 a.m. challenge by gouging out these holes so that way each of the blade components can fit together perfectly. And I'm just applying some hot glue here as an insulator for the wiring so that way I'm not carrying around a Galaxy Note 7 at a convention. And here you can see how the pegs fit perfectly in the holes. That's what she said. And here we're going to apply the first magnets to the handle. Now this was really annoying because I got glue all over my fingers. It was not a fun time, but Gorilla Glue just gets wherever it feels like. And now putting the magnets in the cover, I just threw the magnets on the existing ones so that way everything was polarized correctly and facing the way it should be when it goes in. And let me tell you, this is the step that really got glue on my hands like all over the place. It was not fun. And I won't lie to you when I say that this was more difficult than what it looked. So I was getting all the lights aligned and I had to hot glue it down so that way it would stay aligned whenever I put the top portion of the blade on. It was a lot of tedious, agonizing fun. And putting a crap ton of glue down and putting the second half of the blade on there so that way the whole thing is basically assembled at this point. And with the batteries in, let's flip on the blade and look how beautiful these lights are. I'm super proud of how bright these are and how it just looks in the blade. And I know there's a gap there, but I don't care. It's my first prop. Let me have this moment. And now finally we're putting on all the small details. So I started off with the oval thing, then I went to the teardrop, which I had to cut out some of the paint for. And then after that, we went to the gems that went onto the handle. You gotta start off with the big one, and then I did all the small ones. I kind of swapped how I did it. I put glue on the gems at first, but then I just started gluing into the spot where I would put them. It was a lot easier that way, a lot less glue mess, and it was just way better to do it that way. And then everything went to heck. So a few things happened after that. So I had the genius idea of trying to close the gap in the blade by just trying to crush it with my hands, and in the process, I tore the light strip. So I had to completely gut it. I had to take out the light strip, I had to unsolder it. I had to put in another section of light strip, praying to God I didn't break it again. Do that, resolder it, and then the switch decided to break. For some reason I couldn't get it soldered on the pins, and when I did, it just didn't work. So I decided to say, screw it, I'm just gonna have this work by just throwing the batteries in. It's gonna stay on all the time as the batteries are on, but I don't care, it works. So on top of that, I decided to glue all around the blade where the gaps were to try and close it a little bit and make it a little better. And then I painted over those, and then I made an absolute complete mess of the handle. So it does not look very clean at all, but you know what? This is my first prop. You'll live and you'll learn. So here she is. This is the finished prop here. You can see right there on the handle, it's just not...
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I don't know how it got that bad. Maybe it had to do with the painter's tape, I don't know. You can see a bunch of the super glue stains there. I might just do what I did when I was trying to fix the purple on the handle there and just hand brush it on to cover the super glue stains. So that should work fine, but and you saw their magnets aren't that strong, so this kind of fell off. That also might be my fault. Who knows? But as I'm swinging this around and stuff, the handle should not be an issue falling off because, well, my hand's right there. And it also covers most of the blemishes, so it works. And here's the blade all lit up here. It looks pretty freaking cool though, with all things considered, with all my shortcomings on this thing. Yeah, just swing this around and stuff like that. It's holding up pretty well with all things considered. This is just held together by hot glue. Yeah, when I put it back together, I used hot glue. I didn't use the Gorilla Glue, and it'll work just fine for cosplay shots. And look at that with the lights off. Bam, bam, bam. Batter up, bang. And it's out of here. But yeah, overall, even with all the issues I have with this, and the build's basically done now, I'm happy that I got to at least make it. With all this being said, this is a really cool blade. I'm going to get some really sick shots as Kuki with this. 5-foot rule, it's not going to look that bad. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this blade build video. I really hope you didn't use it as a full-on tutorial because I don't even know what I'm doing still. But yeah, make sure you all subscribe if you like the video and want to see more build projects in the future, as well as other cosplay content, as well as follow my Instagram for pictures of me in the full-on Kuki cosplay doing cool picture stuff. My Patreon, my Twitter, everything else will be down below. And until next time, where I begin building all of the Genshin Impact weapons and taking over the entire world by making everyone gay for the shin, and I will see y'all in the next video. Yeah.